What's up, everyone? So I was watching First Take on ESPN this morning, and Stephen A. Smith, along with the entire panel, had this absolutely brutal segment breaking down the Las Vegas Raiders. And honestly, the way Stephen A. started the show, you could feel the frustration in his voice. He was saying, "No way. This just keeps happening again and again and again to this franchise. It's truly remarkable in the worst possible way, especially in this season considering just about nothing has gone right for the Silver and Black. The only positive thing that's happened is the Raiders fan base has really come together in their shared misery, and Stephen A. was encouraging everyone to stay engaged because they can all sympathize and suffer together, feeling whatever emotions they can about this team right now." The Raiders, of course, went down to the Kansas City Chiefs on Sunday in embarrassing fashion, and the panel had some time since the game to think about it, let it marinate, and try to see if they could find any positives going into the bye week. Charles Woodson posted something on social media yesterday that the First Take crew wanted to address because he was talking about the Miami Dolphins being a broken team. Someone called him out in the replies saying, "Yeah, well, the Raiders are a complete dumpster fire, so what gives you the right to criticize Miami?" Woodson's response was simply, "I was deflecting. And you know what? I'm about to pull a Charles Woodson move right here and deflect from the Raiders' pain for just a second. But instead of deflecting to another team's problems, I'm deflecting your attention to those two buttons below this video. That like button and that subscribe button are sitting there like free agents that nobody's signing, and unlike the Raiders' season, hitting those buttons actually has a positive outcome. It takes literally 2 seconds, costs you 0 draft capital, and I promise it won't result in an embarrassing loss. So smash that like, hit subscribe, and let's get back to discussing actual dumpster fires on the field instead of in the comments section. Now, speaking of the Raiders' struggles, Stephen A. thought that was the perfect encapsulation of where Raiders fans are mentally right now. To be honest, deflecting and finding humor in other teams' dysfunction might be the only way to get through what's happening with this franchise. When you're watching a team not even crack 100 total yards of offense in a game, and when you're seeing Patrick Mahomes do what he does, dominating your team over and over, and all those things that Raiders fans have become just so sick of, there's really no other way to put it. These embarrassing losses have just become commonplace with this Las Vegas Raiders team. The panel feels like Raiders fans are at the breaking point where people are just over it. For the first time in a while, it genuinely feels like the fan base is collectively done with this product on the field, especially when all these systemic issues and problems are being addressed by the coaching staff with generic platitudes like what Pete Carroll said after the game. Carroll mentioned this was a result they didn't see coming, that they had prepared really well, that the team was tuned in, and he couldn't imagine that the guys who weren't able to play would make that much of a factor. He said he just didn't feel that lack of preparation during the week. Then Carroll praised the Chiefs as a terrific team that did everything they always do and played well in all phases while keeping the Raiders completely at bay. Las Vegas couldn't make first downs and couldn't get stops on defense. The analyst on First Take said his all-time least favorite Raiders team was the 2006 Oakland Raiders because of relatively similar circumstances to this current squad. There was some optimism heading into that season, there was talent on the roster, and what it turned into was just an all-out dumpster fire. Randy Moss hated being there. Randy Moss was miserable. Moss got traded to the Patriots mid-season, and history played out the way it did with New England. That 2006 team is his all-time most despised football team in his entire Raiders fandom. It's getting to the point that the 2025 Raiders are becoming eerily similar and getting very close to matching that historically low standard that 2006 set. Not even the Josh McDaniels teams were that bad to watch. Not even the Jamarcus Russell-era teams were that painful, because at least with the McDaniels team in that second season in 2023, he got fired mid-year, and the Antonio Pierce interim coaching stint was sort of fun to watch. It gave a little hope, and at least made football interesting at the end of the season. On the Jamarcus Russell side of things, during those 2007-2009 years, at least Raiders fans had Darren McFadden to hope for, even though those were miserable seasons overall. The analyst has become increasingly more frustrated, just like Raiders fans at home with this current squad. But it's not just frustration with Pete Carroll as head coach. It's not just with Geno Smith at quarterback. Of course, those are the two guys who are going to receive the brunt of the criticism, and understandably so. You naturally go head coach, quarterback, general manager in that pipeline as your 1, 2, 3 most responsible parties. Then everything else falls after that in the hierarchy. But in his mind, when looking at the situation and seeing where things are currently, the problems go way beyond just those key figures. Max Crosby is a fantastic player. Everyone knows that. But a defense cannot be put in situations where they're giving up 30-plus points and can't get crucial third-down stops when the offense is as brutal as it currently is. On a night like Sunday against Kansas City, the analyst has given the defense a lot of passes throughout the season because, for the most part, they've earned the benefit of the doubt by playing relatively well. There's obviously a big difference between facing the Titans versus facing the Chiefs, but you have to get stops when it matters. If you're going to compete and pick up the slack for what's an even more incompetent offense, if the defense is going to shoulder that burden, there needs to be some sort of consistency with the performance. Not even consistency necessarily, just anything at all would be appreciated. Too many times this season there hasn't been that defensive reliability. We saw the defense collapse in the Chiefs game. We saw it in the Colts game. We saw it in the Commanders game. There's way too much inconsistency to feel any sort of sustained confidence that things are going to dramatically change, let alone against Patrick Mahomes and Kansas City, which now feels like the Raiders are just the automatic get-right game by default. It's incredibly frustrating, and it's just part of what comes with being a Raiders fan right now, especially when you have Tony Romo in the broadcast booth just waxing poetic about everything Mahomes does on every single play. But that's kind of what happens when Mahomes can play 2.5 quarters and get benched in the third quarter, because guys like cornerbacks in that secondary just can't get a third down stop, and the offense, in fairness, gave the defense nothing to work with either. What do you have as a franchise at that point? The answer is not a whole lot. The First Take panel was wondering at this point what's actually coming after the bye week in terms of changes. The feeling from the crew is nothing at all is coming. Nothing substantive will change after the bye week because that just appears to be the trajectory of everything else and the way everything has gone this season. What has actually come from previous attempts to fix things? What big adjustments have been made heading into game? Above all of that, the notable move they made in terms of personnel against the Chiefs was benching a player for Alex Leatherwood, because somehow that's going to resolve every single systemic issue beyond just that one position. The analyst doesn't understand how that's the general sentiment coming from the coaching staff. That's something Pete Carroll kind of alluded to, saying they needed to make a personnel change at that spot. You wonder if it's a matter of Pete playing favorites with certain players. You wonder if it's a matter of Pete knowing he doesn't have a very good hand to play with this roster. There are a lot of things not going right for the Las Vegas Raiders, and it starts from the very top of the organization and goes all the way down through every level. The way to fix all of this? The analyst had to be honest. He doesn't know. He really doesn't have answers. He's completely out of words and ideas. A bye week by itself won't fix these problems. The Raiders need way more than just time off. If there's ever a time to make wholesale changes to the coaching staff and roster, it's during the bye week going forward into the second half of the season. Whether those changes actually happen remains to be seen. But Pete Carroll did say that at least 2 guys have a chance to return and play coming out of the bye week for Week 9. Brock Bowers has been dealing with that knee situation, all sorts of complications. Carroll said he does expect Bowers to be back after the bye, which was kind of the anticipation all along. The other player is Jacoby Myers, who did not play in the Chiefs game because of the injury situation. He's expected to be back as well. But whether Myers comes back playing for the Raiders, or whether he's been traded and playing for somebody else by then, the panel thinks that's a little bit of a different story that will play out. You cross that bridge when you get there at the trade deadline. If there's any sort of gleaming optimism about what's on deck for this franchise, the question is, do you even call it optimism at this point? It just feels like the Raiders are really at a complete impasse. Stephen A. said he doesn't blame Raiders fans if they're asking themselves, why are we doing this? Why am I staying loyal to this team through all of this? He genuinely doesn't blame fans for feeling that way. That's just the reality of where things are. The show is going to talk more about the Pete Carroll situation in upcoming episodes and what his future looks like going forward, because that's becoming a major conversation around the league. It might honestly not be the worst thing in the world that the Raiders have a couple weeks off, and fans can enjoy their upcoming Sunday without having to suffer through Raiders football for one. So that was the full first take breakdown of the Raiders hitting rock bottom again with another embarrassing loss to the Chiefs, and the serious questions about whether Pete Carroll is the right coach for this franchise moving forward.